Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli. He is catching up on some backlog on farming, so I'll be sitting in today. And our guest, as usual on Thursdays, is Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Rick, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi.
How you doing, buddy?
Don't
As they
ask.
say in New York.
I've been in quarantine.
How you doing?
I'm sorry?
As they say in New York. How you doing?
Yeah, really. I'm dragging my knuckles. I've got scars on them. I've been in quarantine for almost 2 weeks. I've been very ill, and I'm slowly recovering. Sorry I've missed the last couple of shows. I'm good to go. Hey,
oh, well, good.
Just as soon as I am able. Rocky Raccoon.
Have you been diagnosed with anything?
My doctor did a remote. That was creepy. Blood pressure, sputum, that kind of thing. And decided not to send me to the hospital because I wouldn't go kicking and screaming. I figured that would have been a death sentence. So I've been just a grumpy old man hanging out here, taking care of myself. I've had friends. My girlfriend, Julie, has been bringing me things every day, putting herself at risk. Things like going to the post office every day for book orders, that kind of thing. Creepy.
Hey, grumpy old man, you never know. They might create another movie with you being the star. You got to stick with what works, right?
Hey, the way I see it, it'll be something like live from New York. It's, it'll be something. Yeah, there you go. You're getting the big picture. That's my dream, to end up on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, no kidding. I'll tell you something, Rick. Going to the hospital and acquiring a nosocomial infection, which is pretty threatening these days, is definitely a concern.
Who would like to use I worked in hospitals for years. I was in anesthesiology. Everybody gets sick. It's like grade school. Everything is infectious, and people cough, pick their nose, whatever. It's everywhere. And it's like grade school. Now, with that said, this virus, if this is what I had or not, if you're strong, what it's about is building up immunity like chicken pox. Rather than take, a vaccine, good luck with that. They don't make vaccines for this kind of thing. You have to build up your own immunity, and then you don't get it again. That's that. I have no idea what I had.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is some evidence, and who knows if it's true, because most things from the mainstream media, Rick, is saying that 10% of the people do have a probability of getting it. But you just set the table for a couple of articles I want you to discuss and comment on. I'm going to mention a few articles here, so bear with me for a few minutes.
Is that with naked, or how do I do that bare part? Sorry, Rich. I'm moving in slow motion here. You said bear with me, and I didn't know if you wanted me to get undressed.
Well, I just want you to set the table for some topics of discussion.
Sure.
So I want to mention a few articles here, Rick. Bear with me, and then when I'm done, I'll ask for your comments, please. First article is registered nurse threatens to deny Trump supporter coronavirus treatment. Quote, "We have to decide who gets the vent." And this is by a registered nurse. Erica Waters is apparently her name. She did a Twitter post. And basically this guy, his name is George S. Martin, and he posted a picture of himself and it's basically he's wearing a bandana over his mouth and nose that says Trump 2020 that his wife embroidered onto it. And apparently the nurse was not real happy, and she said things like, "I'll see you in the ER. Please wear your mask so when we have to decide who gets the vent, it'll be easier. Thanks." So, and next article, I'm going to dovetail a few articles here. Next article, basically it's about Bill Gates talking about mass gatherings is not going to be allowed because we're going to need to inject back everybody. We're going to have ID nanotechnology or some type of unseeable tattoo or something. Basically medical tyranny and show me your papers before you go anywhere, which is a total threat to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in America. And, I'm seeing a lot of, especially in the Democrat blue states, Rick, a lot of more deaths decreasing in other disease states while COVID-19 deaths are increasing, which basically implies that anybody who gets sick or dies, even though I have an article here somewhere, here it is right here, 86% of New Yorkers who died with the Chinese virus had other illnesses or conditions. And I read an article just recently where Minnesota was also inflating COVID-19 death statistics, and you have to ask, is this fear and panic manufactured to a level to control the people, to create vaccines for big pharma profits, to eliminate rights, to shorten the life of the people, to lower immune systems? I want you to comment on everything I just said for the people on how they can take the perspective of what I just mentioned.
The correct answer is yes. All of the above. Well.
Can you spell that, please?
Yes, that's called conspiracy on steroids. The thing is, anything you can imagine is probably true and even more. It's a good way to change over to currency. Yeah, no more oral sex. Let's say there's no more, you got to do a Vulcan mind, live long and crispy rather than touch somebody. It's going to go downhill from there. We're social beings. I've been cooped up for almost 2 solid weeks, not able to see anyone, and I'm going blind. I got hair on my hands, etc. It's nuts. It's the whole thing is nuts, and yet it's an opportunity to change. Whether it's good, bad, or ugly, call it. My head's still in the air, flipping.
Yeah, there's a you know the life, and the listeners know the life that I lead here on what I call my hobby farm. I hunt for my meat, catch my fish, raise meat. I grow my own produce. I've given away 50% of everything I've harvested, from meat to fish to produce, pretty much my whole life here in Montana for 35 years. Live off grid, make my own energy. And I'll tell you something, my lifestyle's not really changing much, Rick, because I spend a lot of time being self-sufficient. I spend a lot of time reading and research to give information on the radio, to give people ideas and solutions for thinking outside the box. So I guess where I'm going with this is a suggestion to really have people start thinking differently and becoming a little more self-sufficient. I'm not asking people to drill for their own oil and refine their own gasoline, but there's certain things in the realm of food and activity, skill sets, and going back to some old 19th century
I will
skills.
make one comment that I'd like to make clear to everybody. I have never seen the ugliness of political belief systems and the way Republicans and Democrats interface with each other. And Pelosi, etc., is at the top of the list. Now, these are supposedly lettered and scholared people, and yet they would behave like little brats in a schoolyard. And I remember a time when the Democrats and Republicans wanted the same thing for America. They just wanted to do it differently. That's not true anymore. In fact, it's been infiltrated kind of like the Boy Scouts. And if you get my drift, and it's kind of embarrassing, and about time we have some serious changes in everything and the way we do things. Now, is it a good thing or a bad thing? And, it's subway systems in New York. That's crazy. 2 hours of commuting to go to work. Why would anyone want to live like that when they could live like you do? Having to shoot poor Bambi. Let's say, I don't know, how about who's on second? We talked a lot about the coronavirus. It gives the political parties excuses to enforce martial law and take civil rights away. The bottom line is, when you give up your civil rights for safety, you lose both. That's Ben Franklin.
Absolutely, Rick. In fact, to comment on what you just said, I was in the Boy Scouts for many years, and they basically indoctrinated me into camping and hiking in the outdoors, and I never had any of the problems that infiltrated the Boy Scouts to basically make them go bankrupt, and everybody said this would happen, and unfortunately now the demasculization of boys, the lack of skill sets, basically the powers that be are cultivating and grooming people to push them into urban, suburban areas so they can be controlled. And their skill sets are now pressing buttons and knowing how to be politically correct. As far as shooting Bambi goes, I prefer to eat non-GMO foods, organic foods preferably. I don't like to eat meat grown in laboratories, especially with all the amino acids.
No, I was kidding you. I
know you are.
I remember when my dad, who was a bounty hunter, and he trained me how to hunt, and I would say, I was going to be one of those rough boys until I got hunted by a grizzly bear. And that changed everything. And what happened next is I know how to hunt, but I've stopped hunting unless it's necessity. It's no longer about, He-Man and that kind of thing. Trapping, same thing. And imagine what China's going to do in their diet. Because this whole thing comes from the weird things they eat for dinner.
Well, I understand in the laboratory, it basically...
Oh, yeah, Bill Gates, there he is. The thing is, they had this in the laboratory 2006, and they renewed it in 2018 on the patents. And that means it was in a war room. And I have been in war rooms and watched the way the little guys like Dr. Strangelove behaves. It's nuts. And imagine who would want to use this kind of thing as a weapon with the possibility of it indiscriminately killing everybody.
Rick, hold on to that thought. We're going to comment on what you said regarding this virus being political after the break. Thanks for being here, folks. Good morning, everybody. Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli. He is catching up on a backlog of farming. And I am with Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and we are solving the world's problems. And Rick, before the break, you were talking about or implying about how everything is being politicized today. And Congress is now no longer basically working for the people, and they're pretty much working for the lobbyists, the PACs, the special interests. In fact, they don't even associate socially with the people. All they care about and represent is their so-called funders and their personal ambitions, and is more important than representing the people, and the manufacturing the perception of their own self-importance and self-preservation is more important than 95% of the people. And before I mention a few articles here regarding the how political the whole system has gotten for the benefit of the few, I want to mention a movie. I talked about it a few times over the years and mentioned it in the book. It's The Simple Life of Noah Dearborn. It's with Sidney Poitier. And Sidney Poitier is a great classic actor. It's an old movie. I'm guessing it's probably in the neighborhood of 15 years old. I'm totally guessing at that. But he's a carpenter. And what his life is, he inherited like 35 acres from his uncle. And it's basically a hobby farm. He's got cows on it, goats and sheep and ducks and chickens, and he lives off-grid in his barn in the loft without electricity. He's got plenty of money, and basically he just runs around helping people, like fixing this widow with a bunch of kids, fixed her screen door, makes homemade brandy. He even convinced this blood-sucking lawyer to quit his job and basically get into nature and start a winery. And it's just a really good movie about helping others, living below your means, knowing the fine line between needs and wants, and living in nature. So for those of you who have not seen that movie, The Simple Life of Noah Dearborn, with Sidney Poitier, I really recommend you do that. Now, I'm going to mention a few articles here, Rick, and what we should probably try to do, because I notice we have a little delay, Rick. Let's try to give a little pause. When I'm done speaking, I'm going to say, Rick, so we don't talk over each other, so we can keep our messages in context.
Good luck with that, yeah. Okay.
Okay, buddy?
Yeah.
All right. Next article is House Republican demands Congress to fund the World Health Organization until, well, basically that's the meat and potatoes of the article. Next article, universities have been accepting billions of dollars from foreign governments, and that includes Harvard, with professors being paid under the table, and they're failing to report a big chunk of this money. Next article, Ilhan Omar, you all know who she is. She's the one from Minnesota, the congresswoman who says that Latinos cannot compete in a merit-based system. I'm sure you remember her, the one who married her brother and got into this country with fraud. You know who I'm talking about. Anyway, she says the next relief package must provide cash payments to non-citizens. Now, if we can't connect the dots here, folks, I think we're dead. It's pretty obvious they want to eliminate our sovereignty. They want to, the bottom 93% is basically so economically, fiscally compromised. 70% of people don't have $1,000 in the bank. 50% of people can't come up with $500 for an emergency. 80% of people live paycheck to paycheck, but yet the Democrats and a few Republicans want us to pay for illegal immigrants at every level, which increases inflation, as you know, regarding health care, car insurance, education, because they don't have to pay for this stuff, but we do. We foot the bill for them, and that's why the prices of those instances have gone up through the roof. So, Rick, if you would like to comment on whether it be the movie I mentioned with Sidney Poitier or these publicized articles, I will give you the airtime after this break.
No, I'm just too spontaneous for my goodness. I just, and I have a hot flash, I just go with it, and I apologize if I'm interrupting you.
No, you don't need to apologize, buddy. It just...
I love Sidney
Poitier. Morning, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is Rich Scheben from Montana, sitting in for Vincent Finelli. He is trying a new marketing idea today. He actually found in his high school memorabilia in a single white glove, and he's trying to revive old Michael Jackson music with country music to see if it would work. Now, if you guys believe that, please call me at home. I have some bridges to sell you. Now, Rick, when I talked about that movie, The Simple Life of Noah Dearborn with Sidney Poitier, did you ever get to see that? Rick, are you still on the line? Okay, we might have lost Rick, folks. I'll let the engineers see if they can call him back and see what has happened. In the meantime, I'm going to go into articles. And
what's happening?
Are you there, Rick?
Yeah.
Okay. I asked you a question. You didn't respond.
I answered. Honest.
Okay.
I guess they muted me just because.
Oh, that could be.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you never know these days. Technology is not our friend for the most part.
Yeah.
It's about censorship and surveillance against the people. There's no doubt about it. But, Rick, I asked you a question regarding that movie, that Sidney Poitier movie, The Simple Life of Noah Dearborn. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I did. I saw it, was it 40 years ago or 30? Something like that. It was a really old movie.
Yeah, it's at least 15 years old. It's a great movie, though.
No, I think it's older than that because I think I saw it when I was a kid.
You know, Sidney Poitier never gets old. In fact, that was kind of the MO in the movie, basically about his longevity because he was so happy with his lifestyle that he never looked old. And but what do you think about that lifestyle, living on a 35-acre hobby farm, living off grid, living below your means?
If I weren't writing and, driven to finish things I started, when I was a kid, I would live like a Quaker up on top of a mountain, very simple life. I have to promote and do my little dance because Amazon, there's no way to promote my books. I need a literary agent. I've got a big shopping list. And I can't do it all. I can do it all, but which one am I going to do? Because there's only room for one person at a time. And if I'm writing, how do I promote myself? Dancing. Yeah. So did you know I have a title for every single year out of graduate school, plus at least 6 follow papers for each year. And that's just the beginning. Then you start talking about me being a polymath, which means, oh yeah, I've been writing in a bunch of different fields. And so there are people out there that don't know I'm the same person. I got called from Poland yesterday. There's Scorpion is a company that is making hemp harvesters and out of Poland. And they say, oh, we just discovered you and would like you to market our products. And I said, I didn't market things like that. I invented them. That's what I did because back in the 70s, nobody did herbs. How do you get a leaf off of peppermint? That kind of thing. So I've got all these different things I've got to do. I don't have any time to do them. And then I really would like to live a simple life like you do, up on top of a mountain, watching the squirrels and the rabbits mate. That was weird last week. Spring had started and the rabbits were out everywhere. It was creepy. I watch things and I enjoy just sitting. But no, I've got to be productive. So I get this long bullwhip I give to my girlfriend. It gets me going. What did that do today, Rick? How about you, Rich? You got any more books happening?
You know what, I don't, because the book that I came out with, I'll be honest with you, the powers that be are doing everything to... I've had books come back to me where my table of contents was deleted. The first chapter was deleted. I literally had books come back to me where the words were transposed, where I've had deleted words, deleted sentences. I've had hundreds of people contact me from around the globe telling me they cannot give a positive. I had up to a 4.7 stars out of 5. I don't know what it is now. It's probably just like 4.3 or something. And basically they can't add any more positive reviews, only negative reviews. So the powers that be, we're in the book burning era of America and the world, where political correctness is dominating and holding on to the narrative, swaying public opinion, manufacturing perception, pity, guilt, and ideology and race baiting is the new norm. And this is why they have to do divide and conquer strategies in order to win.
Well, I follow these kids. They want drugs, so I just did a follow-up, what do you call it, an addendum book on psychedelic mushrooms. I'm going to put it up on the website. Got another one coming out on stress management. Wrote that in 1981 before computers. Imagine me with galleys trying to figure out how to put that back into Word and then index it. Oh, Jesus. It's unbelievable. And I'm having fun writing about drugs because right now I've got a company we've just started up in Edmonton doing chaga. And Israel, got a big coffee manufacturer there, wants to put chaga now in coffee to make coffee healthy. Big tree fungus. Grows on birch. We're farming it now all through Canada. All these different mushrooms like I originally dreamed. Forest farming, another title I wrote.
Yeah. In fact, if you ever want to go into edible and medicinal plants, I've given many a tour. In fact, I harvest chaga in the winter off of birch trees, and it's all over a lot of other trees too, Rick, like aspen, but I harvest it purposely off the birch because the butylene and butylenic acid that comes off of the birch trees adds more immune stimulants to basically combating cancers and tumors. And chaga,
did you know that birch is where you get wintergreen oil? And that's what the chaga needs in its symbiosis with the polysaccharides. It's interesting. Birch is wintergreen oil because we wildcrafted the herb gone. Now there's hardly any wintergreen anymore. All comes from birch. And you mentioned aspen. Aspen is the second largest life form on Earth. The first one is fairy ring mushroom in the Blue Mountains. Single organism. Takes over a whole bunch of mountains, one organism. Can you imagine?
Yeah. No, I harvest a lot of this stuff. I look at toxicity, I look at palatability, I look at the vitamin content. It's just, I look at reducing inflammation and pain. I look at the butylenic acid. I harvest burdock. I harvest arrowleaf balsam root. I harvest asparagus, wild asparagus. I harvest sheep sorrel.
There it is. That's a something. That's so pretty.
I mean, there's so many. We can do shows on this, but let's stay on point a little bit regarding some of the things that's going on with the coronavirus, because I know there's a lot of unsettling information, a lot of misinformation that comes from the mainstream media in order to, like we discussed earlier, take away our rights, freedoms, liberties, and justice. So I'm going to mention a few more articles here. Rick, go ahead and comment when I'm done here, please. First article, more people died from suicide last week in Tennessee than coronavirus. I mentioned on the air just 2 days ago how we haven't even hit 1/10 of the deaths compared to the normal flu, which is between 30 and 40,000 people in America per year. I'm not basically trying to displace or dismiss the severity of the coronavirus or its contagion. However, there is very obvious that the powers that be are using this agenda to not let a crisis go to waste. Hence the next article. George Soros-funded group to governors release as many prisoners as possible due to the coronavirus. Well, that's what the Nazis did to get the SS. Their secret service, their mercenaries for hire. Next article, Pope says pandemic is clearly nature's response to global warming. Never mind solar activity, pole shifts, and geoengineering and weather modification, and all the hundreds of patents by the Monsantos and the Rothschilds of the world. And next article, last article in this clump of articles, Rick, is Delling poll. Trust the experts on coronavirus. Sure, which experts? Like the Pope, like George Soros. See, we're getting to the point where everybody's bought and paid for, including scientists in the medical field, and the little people don't know who to believe. Your comment, Rick.
Well, the coronavirus is, what makes it dangerous is that everybody's going to get it. That means it isn't just a few people. Everybody gets it. That means there's going to be a body count, 1.5%. Everybody dies of flu. However, 100 times more are going to die from the panic and the stress that it created than from the virus itself. And finally, in Oregon, the body count and the contagion count is down this week. It's going downhill now, not uphill.
Well, that's well said, Rick, and I've used this analogy on the air many times. I don't know if you've heard me. I use it because we're both woodsmen, or at least at one part of your life you were, where people, when you read people who get lost in the woods, what do they die from most of the time? It's not hypothermia. It's not being killed by a bear or mountain lion. It's fear and panic. They just lose it, and that's what makes people die. And they're using the same strategy here against the people, and they're not giving proper information, and they're fomenting, not like they do with political correctness and hate, but they're fomenting fear. Rick, I'm going to mention a couple of articles here because we're talking about the politicalization of this virus. First article, socialists wasted over $160 million on failed campaign. This is Bernie Sanders, by the way. $160 million that could have been helping the people. This is the socialist who has 3 homes, who's a multimillionaire, by the way. Next article, Trump, a weird deal. Bernie Sanders dropping out keeps his delegates. Is this basically to drop out and create a brokered convention for a new Democratic nominee? I wouldn't be surprised. You have any comments on that, Rick?
The problem I have is with all the candidates. I didn't vote for Trump. I voted against Clinton. It is an embarrassment with whom both parties are offering as their candidate. You know, there was a time when the president or leader of a country was supposed to represent the most scholarly and morally correct. What has happened? It's an embarrassment to be an American now.
Hold that thought, Rick. Thank you for being here, folks. We'll be right back after the break. Good morning, folks. Rich Scheben here from Montana. I am with Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and we're talking about a lot of things, including the coronavirus and then the politics surrounding it and the misinformation and the fact that the powers that be are doing more with our taxpayer dollars regarding manufacturing the perception of their own self-importance and self-preservation than helping the people. And in that note, let's talk a little bit about the misrepresentation and using political correctness to distort facts. I'm going to mention 3 articles here, Rick, and I'm going to have you comment on them. First article, MSM, mainstream media, finally picks up on the story 5 days later that COVID kills the obese. Next article, professor says fat phobic to say gaining weight dangerous during pandemic. Basically talking about how it's politically incorrect to say that because to mention fat obesity, even though 40,000 people per month die relating to obese-related conditions of many disease states. And last but not least, 90-year-old Long Island woman saved by HCQ, which is, of course, hydroxychloroquine. And, Rick, there's a lot of blue states, Democrat states, that have kind of almost tried to make it illegal to even discuss HCQ. And we all know, I think by this point in time, anybody who does a little reading and researching, that HCQ, along with azithromycin, and especially zinc, has been very effective. What is your comment on this and how, you know, it's not just the disease state of being obese, but it's lung issues, it's secondary infections, it's heart issues, it's diabetes. I mean, there's a lot of immunocompromised patients out there in many categories, and I think, like you mentioned earlier in the show, where our immune systems are so suppressed we are not getting the nutrition that we need to fight off a lot of these bacteria and viruses. So what is your comment on what I just said?
I'm not sure how to respond. I can say that the human body is possibly the finest laboratory we'll ever invent on this earth, and that if it's properly stuck with the right enzymes and da-da-da-da-da, you can do anything, including get younger. I'm going to try that this next year.
Yeah, but a lot of our enzymes and proteins have been proven to be modified in the laboratories.
Well, then there it is. And the fact is, you shouldn't be taking supplements. You should be eating correctly and making your own.
Well, I agree, but a lot of people, 90% of Americans, when you look at the math, Rick, live in urban, suburban America. I really hope this is a wake-up call for the American people to start thinking about living rural, getting a little bit of land, growing a garden, raising animals, maybe doing a little hunting and fishing, maybe living off-grid, and living the life that Sidney Poitier portrayed in The Simple Life of Noah Dearborn. For those of you who have not seen that movie, it's a great movie. It's a little bit of romance. It's a lot. Basically, it shows how happy this man is, Sidney Poitier, his character, living off-grid, living simple, helping others, having his hobby farm with his goats and his cows and his chickens. He had a beautiful little stream running through it and with a nice little footbridge that he was working on. And basically, part of the message in there shows that was about his longevity, because he was so happy in life, he did not look very old. And Sidney Poitier never looked old. I mean, he always looked 20 years younger than he is. But it's just a great movie. It'll make you smile. It's a feel-good movie, and I really recommend you getting that movie. So, Rick, regarding the political correctness about this, where people are saying, don't worry about lowering your bars of standards and expectations, even though being obese contributes to 40,000 deaths per month. What do you have to say about that? I mean, when professors are coming out and saying fat-phobic.
Well, I've noticed, drugs are illegal, but tobacco and alcohol are okie dokie. And that's what more people are killed with than any kind of heroin, or cocaine, methamphetamine, whatever. Then you move to sugar and as the drug of choice. And when you realize that you and I were ingrained with cane sugar right from the get, Coca-Cola Asia right now is no longer using cane sugar or cocaine. That they're using now is cordyceps sinensis as their sugar in the soft drinks. And that's done in Asia. And imagine being able, but you see what makes that mushroom, the pharmaceutical mushroom, so important.
Hey, Rick, go ahead and hold on to that thought until after the break, folks. We'll be right back after the top of the hour. Thank you. Welcome back to the show, folks. Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli, and I am with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. And right now, last segment, we were discussing things that make us immunocompromised. And, Rick, you were talking about sugar. And we need to talk more about antioxidants and boosting immune systems and stimulants and builders and blood purifications. And everybody knows that sugar is probably one of the worst immune suppressants out there. And we're being biologically, chemically, and technologically destroyed. From cell phones to 5G, all this electromagnetic radiation is destroying our immune systems. And people need to know that vitamins and minerals, you said not to take too many vitamins, Rick, earlier, and vitamins and minerals regarding our produce comes from the soil. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. Like enzymes, for example, they act as a catalyst for biochemical reactions, which aid in digestion and nutrient support. And that's why I always recommend eating raw, because when you cook your foods over 130 degrees Fahrenheit, you're destroying the enzymes. So, Rick, is there more you wanted to talk about regarding the immune stimulants versus immune suppressants, antioxidants, things like that? What would you say regarding science that would affect our nutrition intake, help our gut, absorption, excretion, metabolism, just basically overall bioavailability and absorption of nutrition in regard to keeping homeostasis better in our body. What would you say?
Well, Gurdjieff started with eat your environment. So obviously, if you live on the coast, you eat fish. If you live in the Midlands, you eat grain. I think that one size does not fit all. I think there's things like blood type that are part of why we're uniquely different from each other and why we need different kinds of foods, even though we're exactly the same in some ways. Why some people are resistant and others are not. When you eat, that's another thing. There used to be a movement called raw, where you ate everything right from the ground into your mouth rather than cooking it. That's interesting. Why? Well, sometimes it doesn't make sense, like eating a bat, not cooking it. That's kind of crazy. What do you think? So I don't know how to explain this other than the earth, everything is right there. And it's not about chemistry, because when you find something like dimethyltryptamine in crabgrass, it's almost as if it's a delivery system from God, like a way of communicating. In other words, there's something more going on than food chain. We have what we call hierarchy, like your gut, where there's Malcolm in the middle, your mycorrhiza with mycelium and all these little soil organisms, and there's a big hierarchy where they're all dialoguing. I think man believed he was in the center of the universe and missed the whole point, that there are actually things out there that are more important than man.
Okay, Rick. Yeah, I'm going to, just so you know, you've let everybody in America and the rest of the world know that you are bat-phobic, so I'm going to call the ACLU.
Thank you. That's a good one. Let's lock him up, man. That's what I need. Yeah. I'm fat and crazy. That's it. There it is. Read it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the political correct world we live in.
Oh, God, Rich.
Of course,
got to go home
here, but you know what? We've got.
That's it.
Where it's getting to the point where you can't even tell a joke anymore because somebody might be offended. I mean, we've literally downshifted into stupid, Rick. It's crazy.
Political correctness, yeah. Yeah, it's really when you have a drag queen reading nursery tales to children, it makes my heart glad.
It's unbelievable, and this is why the silent majority needs to read up, research up, and speak up in that order. And I'm going to mention a couple articles here to show you how nothing is ever what it seems to be. It's all propaganda, hoaxes, false flags, and lies, especially gaslighting from the mainstream media and the powers that be in Hollywood. Now, two articles here. New low for New York Times and a dovetail article. Alyssa Milano says, throw in the towel if Trump can't be impeached for pushing hydroxychloroquine for personal gain. What these articles basically mean, folks, is that Trump apparently had some stock or some type of interest in this pharmaceutical companies for HCQ, and as it turned out, he may get between $100 and $300 for this total. I'm not kidding you. These people not only do not do their research, all they care about is to basically keep creating the bad news towards Trump, which is about 93% from the mainstream media. They want to sway public opinion. They want to manufacture perception, pity, guilt, hold on to the narrative at all costs in order to make you submissive and break your will. Okay? That's what they're doing. It's about as condescending as you could get towards the American people. Okay? We can't reward mediocrity for decade after decade after decade and expect commerce to succeed in this country. They are tearing it down at every level. And the only way we can survive is by reading, research, and speaking up. The silent majority must be no more. Because these two articles, whether it be Alyssa Milano or New York Times, they're all bought and paid for. Every Hollywood, actors being politicians, politicians pretending to be actors. It's unbelievable. And speaking of politicians, Carville says Wisconsin primary prove Republicans will kill people to stay in power. You cannot make up this kind of propaganda. Chicago mayor signs executive order allowing illegal immigrants access to virus relief funds. The Democrat plan could mail ballots to 24 million ineligible voters. Are you connecting the dots here, folks? They want to take over voting. They want to take over cash. They want to create their own money system, their own currency. They want to eliminate rallies and sports and public because too much of mass gatherings. They want to give you vaccines to destroy your immune system and control and see where you are through some type of nanotechnology. Rick, comment on those, please.
Jesus, I'm going to just step aside and let the bus go on through here.
Okay.
You know my position on all this shit. I think it's just a bunch of hooey. And actually, what's true for one person is not another. That's what the whole thing is really about. Because when I ask you what color is that fence over there, and you look over there and you say, well, it's brown, you have made an assumption. You cannot see the other side of that fence. And everybody sees something differently. That's what makes God
I agree with that to a point, Rick. I think there are objective facts and subjective emotional opinions. So I think saying it like it is important because most of the people who want to see a different color fence on the other side is often because they want to promote a certain agenda in order to feather their own nest somehow. Now, here's two articles that you could definitely comment on. Report, Wuhan funeral homes burned coronavirus victims alive. Aren't we glad we have President Trump and we're not living in a totalitarian, socialist, communist state? Next article, secretly moving dead bodies from Wuhan at night. Raw videos. I actually saw this. So my question to you regarding these is a little sidebar, Rick. How come Wuhan has all these so-called viruses and deaths, but yet Beijing and Shanghai and other areas of China are not seeing this crippling effect? What do you have to say about that?
I don't think everybody's reporting everything accurately. And Beijing used to be Peking. And when I was there in Peking, let me tell you, it was a whole different matter than anything you ever dreamed of as rights and things like that. They're not telling anybody anything correctly, and that's why there's as many deaths as there are.
Yeah. Now, Rick, regarding things like venues, jobs, rallies, people getting together, doing commerce, enjoying their life, having certain freedoms and liberties that over 1 million combat soldiers gave their life for us. What's your thought on nanotechnology? Basically, would you say, let's say Bill Gates, which he is saying, and he's connected with Dr. Fauci and the World Health Organization, the UN, they're all in bed together. Let's say some of these people said, well, if you don't take this so-called quote-unquote vaccine, this injection, okay, then even if they don't admit any type of nanotechnology or tracking or chips or tattoos, and they said you're not going to have any access to any of these venues, any of these commerce, would you take that vaccine? Would you take that chip, however they did, or that tattoo? What would you say if I knocked on your door with a bunch of soldiers behind me and said, you're going to take this vaccine, you're going to take this, or you're not going to have any rally, any venue, any sports, any commerce, any freedoms or liberties left? What would you do?
They're already doing that with educating children. So there it is. Our children are our single most important natural resource. And look what we've done. I remember when I was in grade school, they required me to study Latin in second grade. Now, that allowed me to go into agriculture full bore without even a thought. And I can tell you that most people don't even have a clue what the importance of things like cursive is about. It's not writing faster. It's about moving from one side of your brain to the other as an exercise like mathematics. And the benefits of it, not the scroll that comes out later as you get old like me.
Hey, Rick, you mentioned old, and I'm gonna take that personally.
76.
I'm going to be 60 years old here in 2 months. Now, when I say that, I think, and I've suggested this on the air many times, what we need to do, because you just said our children is our best natural resource, and I don't disagree. However, we're not taking advantage of our seniors. You know, just like I think it's probably a good idea if all, especially men, were drafted into the military at a young age so they can learn discipline, responsibility, health, things like that. I think people should teach our youth who are 60 years and older who have practical experience and are not teaching theory, and I'll let you comment on that right after the break. Thanks for being here, folks. Welcome back to the show, folks. Rich Scheben here from Montana, and I am here with Dr. Rick Miller. And Rick, before the break, I talked about an idea. I squeaked in a couple lines before the music came in. Taking the older people, the people who are 60 years and older, and recruiting them to teach our youth from kindergarten to the highest, most complicated college course, and teach them actual practical experience in lieu of theory. But the number one criteria is you have to have 15 years of successful private sector experience. What do you think about that, Rick?
Well, let's talk about that for a second. You know, what makes a child smarter than an old senior is that they're not experienced. Experience limits what you do. And a child doesn't know he can't do something. And if imagination is a reality, what happens next? So those that can do and those that can't teach. That used to be an old thing about college, you know, and why you didn't want to teach at school. You wanted to go out and do something, you know, with your education. I don't know. I think that it would be wonderful to get an old school bus like Frank and Ken Kesey and set it up as a mobile water testing laboratory and have it run by third graders going around the country teaching first graders how to test for purity of water. What do you think would happen next? That'd be a cool one, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, well, just think of how many kids, if 90% of people, Rick, live in urban suburban America, they're living on fluoride and municipal water, which even everybody knows it has caused cancer. It's often a main ingredient.
Right, yeah, it comes to mind. Yeah, that's the bad news, because you and me, well, you are not, probably, that's not true because you're a woodsman, but most people don't have a clue about water at all.
Well, that's what my point is. I think there's a lot of things that aren't being taught in school like that, like health, like
home ec, and mechanical drawing, and
absolutely.
All the things you and I had to do. You said you're 60. How old did you say you were?
I'll be 60 in 2 months, yeah.
That's amazing. I'm 76. You're almost my daughter's age. Jesus, I need to be, I got to be taken out and shot. I can't believe it, man. And I've got scars on my knuckles to prove it. I am lucky because I was blessed with some really, really cool teachers. And imagine someone like Albert Sensgorky teaching me quantum biochemistry as a physics course in 1960. can't believe it, man. I remembered everything, and now I'm just starting to forget myself. That's Annie Lennox. I sometimes forget myself.
Well, just think, Rick, if the curriculum wasn't to dumb down people, dumb down our children, and to make them more monolithic and basically teach them how to push buttons and be politically correct and choose their own gender, and like you said earlier in the show, bring in the drag queen hour in public schools.
One size fits all is not the way it goes. You know, all children are different.
I personally think if President Trump did that idea and has 60-year-olds and over teach practical experience who have 15 years minimum of successful private sector experience instead of coming out of college to teach our kids theory and certain agendas, I think there'd be less political correctness, more learning. When you look at the bottom line, we're putting out lawyers. We've had for decades more lawyers in this country, and than all the world combined, and yet they don't even enforce the rule of law. They're enforcing political correctness.
So that's the problem. Imagine Gecko teaching your children. Greed is good. Yeah.
All right, Rick, we'll be back right after the break, folks, for the last half hour of the show. Thank you for being here. We'll be back with Rick Miller. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Rich Scheben here with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. We are solving the world's problems, or at least trying to. So, Rick, let's say I was President Trump and I called you and I said, Rick, you've been in the private sector, you've written books, you've been on radio shows, you've given talks, you're a physicist, you know your science. Would you be willing to work at least a part-time job share to teach our children at whatever level to make a difference and not be politically correct? In other words, use objective facts and truths in lieu of subjective emotional opinion to promote an agenda like dumbing down the public. Would you do that? I think you would. What do you think?
Well, I'm starting Albert Schweitzer University this next month. I've got this Stefan Verstappen. He's Shaolin, Northern Shaolin. He's going to teach children sidewalk defense. Can you imagine? Hands to nuts combat. I'm going to do a Harry Potter-like university because it seems like the right thing to do right now.
Well, I don't disagree, Rick, but if voter and election fraud continues, if the Democrats get their way and do mail-in ballots and rig the whole system, it doesn't matter what the right thing is, because if it's not fulfilling the agenda, distracting, dumbing down, and dividing the people by groups, you're not going to get the wave of the magic grant. And that's where we are today in America. This is how close we are to a communistic, totalitarian, socialism, tyrannical.
Whoa. You know, I agree and disagree. That my sister runs the Democratic Party for Washington State. I can't talk politics with her. She was went to Oxford, a Fulbright scholar, so she's pretty sharp, and she's a Democrat. And they are different today. And there are different kinds of Democrats because I think it was infiltrated, kind of like Boy Scouts were. You've got all kinds of crazy people in politics. There's this Netflix thing called Designated Survivor that opens your eyes to what's actually going on at the highest levels in the Oval Office. It's unbelievable. And if you can write it as a screenplay, it's that's just the beginning of what's really going on.
Yeah, well, Rick, everything's infiltrated right now at the highest levels, including the Trump administration. How many articles this show talked about the scandals with the FBI, the CIA, the DOJ? I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, he has He's illiterate in many ways and has a trophy wife. She's really nice, but this is crazy. And read my lips. And how did Ronald Reagan put it? If you've seen one redwood, you've seen them all. I can't believe it.
You know, one thing about this show and all the instructors on this show, from Vince Finelli to yourself to the good people who call in on a regular basis, like Kyle from Montana and George from New Hampshire, and just all the good people. I believe that this show is unique, and I think there's a lot of shows like that. I think the people who work at InfoWars, I think there's a lot of good people, a lot of good patriots, and I really think that if any of us got a seat as a dictator where we can control certain agendas, I think 99% of us would do more to help the people regarding prosperity, regarding health, regarding options and opportunities, in lieu of promoting political correct agendas to distract, dumb down, and divide the people. What do you think, Rick?
Well, politics is quite different than being a nerd. I don't get it. You know, politics doesn't make any sense to me. Anybody that would want to be in politics has got to have at least one screw loose. I mean, everybody, including Trump, watch how they age just in 4 years. Everyone.
Well, when I talk politics, Rick, as you know, we've been on the air together, and I'm sure you've heard me a few times. I believe we have to have equal knowledge and rationale with financial, economic, social, and political issues. And that's why I think if we had that, things wouldn't be all politics. People wouldn't be so self-serving at the top levels in order to manufacture their own perception of self-importance and self-preservation. If we connected the dots to follow the money, to show the corruption, the manipulation, and everything behind the scenes on how the powers that be are insulting the work ethic, ability, and intelligence of all these groups, degrading them and disrespecting them, we can see, obviously, how the powers that be are not trying to empower a nation, but lower the bars of standards and expectations for not only getting a job, but rewarding mediocrity and putting the world into a law of diminishing returns where opportunity and knowledge and ingenuity will only be for the elite and their children. It's just like that article I mentioned. It's here somewhere about Bill Gates talking about eliminating mass gatherings, talking about nanotechnology and chipping people or tattooing them or some type of way that they can control them. I guarantee you 100% right now, and I'm not sticking my neck out by saying this, the children of these elite will not get the chips or the nanotechnology or the tattoos. They will not. I guarantee it. It's just like the hypocrisy and double standards for people who are saying we need to get rid of guns, we need to get rid of carbon footprints, but yet these people are literally hiring expert marksmen carrying guns to protect their butts while flying around the world, telling us not to do it, who have 5 houses, huge homes, tons of cars, even planes and jets, and they're telling us to reduce our carbon footprint. We have to call out the hypocrisy and double standards, because it's getting to the point where everything they say, just like the words that they've been using for years, controversial, extremist, racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, conspiracy theorist, intolerant, violent, hater with an anti in front of every word, and ism, phobia on the back of every word. These words don't even mean anything anymore, Rick. They've been used every 5 seconds for the last 40, 50 years, and these words don't hold water. These are divide and conquer terms to foment hate and division, and then they have no other purpose. Rick?
So that describes the distinction between a moral man and an ethical man. And ethics and morals, just like civil giving up natural rights for civil rights law.
Well, Rick, I see this often on the air. Every subset under rules like ethics and morals and values, all the subsets under laws like policies, all the subsets under accountability, which is the biggest joke word in the American dictionary today. Basically, we have a special tiered system based on what group you're in, what victim group status you have, what protections group status you have. So these words don't mean anything anymore because there's different scales and rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you fall into. And as long as they divide us that way, they're going to conquer us that way. And this is why I mentioned that, and those words don't even have meaning anymore. Until we have the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody on this in this country, then it's all irrelevant. It's all talk. It's all cheap. It's not the definitions have been changed, just like all the definitions I talk about regarding our economy, fundamentals and earnings and all these things I've said for so many years, valuations, GDP, leverage, liquidity, solvency, inflation, deflation, debt, credit, core business and corporations, money printing, free markets, supply and demand, velocity of money, profits. Nothing means anything anymore because everything has been tainted. Everything is fixed. Everything is rigged. And if you're in the right group, you're going to get bailed out. Start a bank, start a hedge fund. Don't worry about making a profit. You'll get bailed out by the taxpayers. And the little guy, the bottom 93%, suffers. Rick?
I don't know how to comment to that one. It's just, everybody's different. That is a good thing, not a bad thing. We don't all agree on almost everything. That's actually how there's personal growth and change. That's the deal. I'm glad I live where I live and do what I do. In that sense of it, I don't have to compromise as much as somebody, let's say, living in New York. Can you imagine
Rick,
what it would
I
be
don't
like in
disagree
New
with
York
the
right
general
now?
statement like that. However, when you get down to more specificity, I don't think we need to have the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody because this foments the divide and conquer strategies. And as long as we stay divided as people, we are going to lose freedoms, liberties, time, health, justice, and everything that over 1 million combat soldiers gave their life for. And I think, if anything, if there's one thing that the American people should come together and respect, it's our soldiers, over 1 million, who gave their life, who stormed beaches for our freedoms and liberty, who fought wars that were started by false flags. And we need to remember them, and we need to respect them. And the way to respect them is to read, research, and stop the silent majority. We need to stick up for our country. We need to come together. We can't be divided by what gender we are, what gender we identify as, what skin pigmentation shade we have, what religion we have, what sexual orientation we have. We have to come together with the same rules and laws and accountability. Think about this laws. We have separate laws based on what victim group or protectionist group status you have. It's hard to believe this is the United States of America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Very hard to believe. So when you said earlier in the show it's embarrassing often to be an American, that's because we have different rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you're in, Rick. We need synergy, and we need it bad. And this is why I've been on the air for 9 years. I feel obligated to give information, to wake the people up, to show how we've been played, we've been conned, we've been used, we've been duped, and we are allowing the elite to poison us against ourselves, and we need to do something about it. Rick?
Well, just personal commitments to the day. Today I'm going to try to get myself a little more healthy. I'm not going to worry about the rest of the world at this point. Got enough in my hands.
All right, folks, we'll be back with Dr. Richard Miller after the break. Thanks for being here. Welcome back, folks. Rich Scheben here with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Last segment, thank you again for tuning in. And, Rick, let's do a little science for our last segment. I'll let you take the microphone. I want to talk a little bit about people. Some people are afraid to do the reading and research regarding edible and medicinal plants, and they feel, that certain plants can be toxic, and they certainly can, because some could be emetic, some could be a laxative, some could affect your kidney or liver. Here on my property, I can harvest everything from wild strawberries, raspberries, Oregon grape, currant, gooseberries, service berries, a lot of service berries here, a lot of choke cherries, hawthorn berry, kinnick, buffalo berry. I was wondering in the last segment if you have any advice or words of wisdom regarding the harvesting of berries and the benefits of them as well.
Each plant is different. When St. John's wort was just a red dye, everybody didn't think very much about it. And I have pictures of me up in Spokane using a 30-foot header bar, knocking down 1,600 acres of St. John's wort. But it wasn't any good because the red dye, the hyperforin that was used for depression, was not a neurotransmitter, which means it could not go across the blood-brain barrier. What happened is there were two volatile flavonoids in that basically were released in that plant at the coldest of night, and when that was the neurotransmitters that took the hyperforin across the blood-brain barrier. That meant if you harvested it at noon, the plant was useless. Each plant is different and talks to you in terms of how you would approach the plant and want to take it. And there's no general rule any more than there are like children. Every child is different.
Have you ever, I harvest a lot of things: lamb's quarter, dandelion, foxtail grass, fireweed. Fireweed's great. I put it in my salads. I mean, there's just, I've even harvested the inner bark of larch because it clears liver conditions. It has an enzyme called xanthine oxidase, along with vitamin B and C, which slows uric acid buildup. So there's so many things. Plantain is like spinach, strawberry, raspberry blight. It's related to spinach. It's recommended to eat in smaller quantities, but I added it to salad because it has vitamin B, C, iron, and calcium. So there's just a lot of benefits to, and fun, to learning the harvesting of edible and medicinal plants. It gets you out, it gets you moving, gets you walking. I've given hundreds of tours on edible medicinal plants just here on my little hobby farm, and I think people are willing now, with the printing of money going through the roof. We're probably going to see some inflation, possibly hyperinflation. I hope not, but it's very possible. And food is going to go up. Necessities are going to go up for the little guy. And I think people are going to be looking to start growing gardens, raising animals, harvesting edible or medicinal plants, and thinking outside the box. What do you think about that, Rick?
Yeah, going back to a more simple way of living. It's like your grandpa, only using high tech, like LEDs rather than sunlight.
Mm-hmm. The simple life of Noah Dearborn, right, Rick?
Yeah, there it is. Your movie of the week.
Yeah.
Nice being with you.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be running out of time here in a matter of seconds. Rick, do you have
just hit the brick wall?
Do you have any last words or exclamation points to put on what we discussed today?
Oh, Cisco, Pancho. It was nice being with you, Rick.
Oh, it's always great being with you, Rick. And finishing up, folks, I want to remind you that the benefits and the vitamins and minerals of gardening comes from the soil. So we must, you don't need to buy farmland. You can build your own raised beds. You can make your own soil. Put your chicken poop and goat poop and your compost that comes out of your kitchen, and you can literally make your own soil. You can go to a nursery and start and buy soil and start it in narrow raised beds, and you can literally start a garden in a matter of a week. So I want to remind people of that. Farmland is not necessary. A lot of farmland has been compromised. The soil has been chemically and mechanically beat to smithereens. smithereens, and there's not a lot of nutrition left in that old farmland in a lot of cases. And remember the Senate majority. Here's a quote from Mark Twain, which I've mentioned on the air a few times. In the beginning of a change, the patriot is a scarce man, and brave and hated and scorned. When his cause succeeds, the timid joins him. For then it costs nothing to be a patriot. Mark Twain. Dr. Richard Allen Miller, Rick, thank you again. It's always great being on the air with you. You have a great weekend coming up, buddy.